Thank you, Presiding Officer, and let me, like others, thank Marie Todd for the opportunity to discuss something that probably is of interest to every one of us personally, either as an individual or as some member of the family. Now, I'm not a regular reader of hypertension news, but the February 2017 edition, I read of the objective of screening 25 million people's blood pressure in May this year. And I can advise the Chamber that I have made my little contribution with a very helpful cooperation of my MSP colleague Emma Harper, who had her sphygmomanometer and her stethoscope at the ready earlier today and took my blood pressure. It was not good news. But I had just come up the stairs and I hadn't sat down and done my calming down. So 158/70, okay on the diastolic, a wee bit high on the systolic, was rather higher than the previous time I had it when it was 130/75, which is kind of where I'd like to be. But I'm going to go away and think about this salt business. I might even give up drinking for a couple of days, because I think for each of us, there are things that we can do. But the publication I referred to, Hypertension News, a lot of quite interesting articles in it. There's one article, for example, about a German lady, 54 years old, slim, quite fit, but her blood pressure is regularly over 300 systolic and a diastolic in the 170, 180 range. And she's quite healthy. But the drugs have stopped working for her. So therefore, it's one illustration among very many that each hypertensive person is likely to be quite individual and require individual attention. The publication also talked about a lot of work that's been done to try and identify DNA triggers that might create a predisposition to, or which, by resetting the DNA, one might address. It's fair to say, with almost no success whatsoever. They suggest that only 1 milligram, which is but nothing, it's beyond clinical measurement accuracy, is attributable to DNA. So we don't know why it happens. And for something that affects the number of people that it does, that's really quite worrying. So I think the efforts of the British Heart Foundation and others to continue research into conditions that affect the heart adversely is something we should continue to support. Because from the reading I've done, at least today, I know that we know much less than I thought we knew. And that's a bit concerning. I must say, as somebody whose hobby is family research, I've read in my own family tree over 2,000 death certificates, and I'm relatively pleased to say that dying from heart failure is not a major one, although strokes are quite common in that. So I'm going to wait and have a think about that. As a private pilot, of course, I have an annual medical, which includes testing my blood pressure, testing my urine to see if I'm diabetic, testing my hearing, testing my eyesight, and an ECG. I have to say, in 20, nearly 30 years, I've only had a single ectopic heartbeat in my ECG, which is good news, but we've seen a steady growth in my blood pressure, and that won't be unusual. I'll just close by saying diet, and I'm going to think about my diet, maybe salt in particular, and the association in diet and hypertension is quite well known, and the Mediterranean diet is relatively well known to be one that is not associated with hypertension. And the really bad news is this week, because of weather conditions, there's an olive oil shortage. So can I encourage colleagues, there is a good substitute. It's Scottish extra virgin rapeseed oil, which you can get in the northeast of Scotland, in my constituency. So don't worry, we've got the solution in the northeast, even if the Italians are letting the side down by not producing enough olive oil. This is a fascinating subject. I'm sure it will run and run. I'm going to be interested to hear what Mr. Whittle's going to say in particular, because I know he's very interested in the subject. Presiding Officer.